While there are potentially an infinite amount of reactions that I would receive from just this title alone, I think there are going to be three that are very popular that I will try to answer as soon as possible in this video. The first reaction is going to be from the majority of my audience, and that's going to be people that only play the TCG, and they're probably wondering what the heck 6-style dual wield is, because even when 6 Samurai was the best deck in the TCG, no one played that card, no one even tested it. It just wasn't on people's radar, and that's perfectly fine. Hopefully you stick around for this video to learn why the card is so popular in Duel Links. The second category of people is going to be my TCG/Duel Links fans that have paid attention to my recent live streams. They're probably not super surprised to see this because I've talked about 6-style dual wield tons of times while I've been streaming. It's a card that I've played with and a card I've played without, and overall I'm not a huge fan of the trap card despite how popular it is for other players. The third reaction that I'm expecting is probably mostly going to come from non-subscribers, especially people that haven't seen me play Duel Links during my live streams, and that's going to be the Duel Links players, the average Duel Links players that don't really understand where I'm coming from, because right now Dual Wield is one of the most popular and polarizing cards in the 6 Samurai deck. A lot of people think it is like the most broken card in that entire strategy, maybe just behind Xian, but I don't actually think the card is very good, so they might be questioning where I'm coming from. In today's video, we're going to answer three different questions. First, we're going to answer why 6-style Dual Wield was not played in the TCG, not even a little bit. Now we're going to answer why I personally don't think it's that good in Duel Links. And finally, we're going to talk about why the card is still so popular in Duel Links format, despite the fact that I don't think it's the optimal choice. And while I don't think my Duel Links credentials are super necessary in many of these Duel Links discussions, I expect I'm going to get a lot of pushback from 6 Samurai players. So here's just a brief summary of how I've been playing the deck over the past couple weeks that it's been out. When it first came out, I got King of Games twice in 5 hours. So just in 5 hours, I was able to get King of Games once, and then the season reset, and then I immediately got it as soon as the next season started. I also managed to very easily, just in a few hours, get to D level max in the KC Cup Stage 1, and currently I'm rocking a 70-ish% win rate in KC Cup Stage 2, all mostly without using Dual Wield. Now, to be fair, I have tested with Dual Wield several times. Personally, I just don't think the card is as good as people are making it out to be, so I eventually cut it, and overall, of all the streams that I played with Dual Wield and without Dual Wield, the ones where I had the worst win rates were with Dual Wield. 6-style Dual Wield is a pretty straightforward normal trap card from Extreme Victory. It says if the only monster you control is one 6 Samurai monster in face-up attack position, target 2 cards your opponent controls, which can be monsters or spells or whatever, return those targets to the hand. So there are a ton of reasons this card did not see play in the TCG, but let's just focus on the two major ones. Reason number one is that a 6 Samurai deck, and I'm going to argue in a little bit that this is how it should work in Duel Links as well, but at least in the TCG, the main reason 6 Samurais were so strong is because they would summon a huge field of multiple monsters. We're talking Xian number 1, we're talking Xian number 2, we're talking multiple copies of Kizan. The 6 Samurai strategy was good and much better than the other decks of 2011 because it could put so many monsters on the board. Therefore, you couldn't really use Dual Wield because you wouldn't want to restrict yourself from summoning more than one monster. But the second big aspect and the big reason that this card wasn't played in the TCG, even ignoring the swarming capabilities of 6 Samurai, is that the back row quality in the TCG, even back in 2011, is infinitely higher than the trap quality in Duel Links. I know Duel Links has good traps. It has things like Treasure Trap Hole and plays of Canadian Wall Disruption, and while those cards are good in Duel Links, maybe not so much at this very moment, but they are very popular just historically speaking, compared to the popular trap cards of 2011, those cards just can't compete. Things like Solemn Warning and Solemn Judgment are infinitely stronger than the Duel Links traps, so yeah, people just don't have the reasoning to actually play Dual Wield when they have so many better options. Not to mention that access to cards like Gateway of the 6 Samurai makes the TCG version of the deck in 2011 way faster than the current Duel Links variant. So now that you know why people didn't play the card in the TCG, let's transition into why I don't like the card in Duel Links. What I'm going to propose is basically that you should play the Duel Links 6 Samurai deck very close to what people were playing in the TCG back in 2011, and that's that you play as many combo cards as humanly possible. In basically every single variant of 6 Samurais that I've currently had success with, I play 0 trap cards. Now in some cases I'm playing cards like Asceticism, in some cases I'm not. There's all sorts of different ratios for monsters and spells spells that I've tried out and decided weren't good or decided were better than my past builds, but the one thing that's basically stayed constant outside of the few cases where I have tested 6 style dual wield, all my successful variants didn't play a single trap card. Not dual wield, not treacherous, not Paleozoic Canadia. It just played monsters and spells, and in most cases it played 26 samurai cards to maximize consistency. Now, I'm not saying that's the only way to build the deck, but keep this in mind. Dual wield is a very flashy card, but I also feel it's a win more card. When you go first and you open Xian dual wield, yes, you're going to win those games, but you also would have won those games if you ended with Xian Fuma or Xian Anishi especially, or even if you can get to like Xian Anishi Fuma, which is almost impossible to break. And that's something that I felt that I learned very quick when I started playing Six Samurai that many of my opponents simply didn't know was a right play. One of the best ways to beat a Six Samurai player is by overpowering their Xian. It doesn't protect itself from battle unless you have other Six Samurai monsters, so by ending with just one Xian and one dual wield, if your opponent is able to summon a couple big monsters, you're just going to lose that game almost every time. By ending on Xian Fuma or ending on Xian Anishi, or if you can get both of them, that's even better, that prevents your opponent from running over the Xian by battle. Now they have to deal with like so many cards. They have to deal with the Xian, they have to deal with the Anishi, and they have to kill, if you summon Fuma, 2 things in battle before they beat the Xian in battle. That's way too much for most decks to actually do, especially when you have a Xian to negate their best spell or trap. But the main reason that I didn't like dual wield in my initial testing, and especially as I played it more and more, and also I think the biggest reason that players like Duel Links meta, who went to the World Championship, actually started cutting the card from his most recent list, is because the card simply sucks going second, and that's a huge liability. When you're playing Six Samurais, going second in the mirror is already a really bad situation. Your opponent might have back row, they might have Anishi, they might have Xian, obviously, and when you have dual wield, which not only isn't good because it's a trap card, but also isn't good because it requires you to have a monster on board, suddenly you're just stuck with dead cards in your hand that would have been cards that could have helped you break your opponent's board. The way to beat a Six Samurai deck, especially when you go second, is just to put more summons than your opponent can deal with, and unfortunately a trap card doesn't really accomplish that goal. In other words, dual wield is only good when you go first, but you already should be winning those games, and then it's not good going second, games that you might have been able to win if you didn't have the card. I'm not saying there aren't games where dual wield is significantly better than other options, especially against decks like Yubel and other rogue matchups. It's a very good card going first or second, but the fact of the matter is that when you're playing in the KC Cup, when you're playing in Legend on the ladder, you're almost certainly just going to play mirror match after mirror match after mirror match, and that really just leaves it up to a coin toss. Wouldn't you rather play a deck that is good going first, because just the natural engine cards of Six Samurai are super strong when you win that coin toss, but then you make the rest of your deck good going second. Play cards like Asceticism that can push through your opponent's negates, instead of playing a card that's only good when you were probably already going to win and then gets much worse in every other situation. I can't tell you the amount of times that my opponents that were playing dual wield simply summoned Anishi or summoned Fuma, set a back row and passed. Whenever I went first, I was always able, like 99% of the time, able to summon at least one Xian, and oftentimes, depending on the build that I was playing, summon more than one Xian, or Xian Anishi, or Xian Fuma. Definitely a lot more consistent when you don't play a bricky trap card. Of course, even after I say all of this, I mean, I'm not like the biggest influence on the Duel Links community. There are a ton of players. Like, it's the more popular variant to use 3 copies of dual wield in every single Six Samurai deck, despite the fact that I don't think it's the right choice and that many other high-ranking players also agree. Here's the deal. Why are people playing dual wield? Well, there are a few reasons. I'll talk about them, but basically the biggest reason is that the standard for trap cards is so much lower in Duel Links compared to the TCG that when a card like dual wield comes out and it's usable in the best deck, obviously players are going to gravitate towards it because the trap cards they're used to are so weak. In other words, if you compare dual wield to Solemn Warning, obviously most players are going to say Solemn Warning is better, but if you compare dual wield to cards like Paleozoic Canadia, well, now there's a little bit of debate. Paleozoic Canadia is one of, if not the best trap cards in Duel Links right now, and dual wield in some cases, actually a lot of cases, is simply a better version as long as you're playing Six Samurais. So when you compare dual wield to one of the best traps in the entire format and it looks better than it, obviously players are going to go, oh my god, I should definitely play this card. I will also say that Duel Wield gets a huge boost, and I mean a noticeable boost from not having a main phase 2 in the format. If you use Duel Wield in the TCG and your opponent was in the battle phase, they could simply go to main phase 2 and then summon some more monsters, but because there's no main phase 2 in Duel Links, a card like Duel Wield, and very similar to something like Wall of Disruption, becomes a lot more powerful because there's no chance for your opponent to make a follow-up play. Another reason that I think that build is so popular is something that I've noticed when I've been playing Duel Links over the past year or so competitively, and that's that it really seems like once a build becomes successful, once a build becomes popular, people are very, very strict. Like, they really adhere to that deck list and they don't really try too many other crazy things. That's perfectly acceptable, and I think it happens for a multitude of reasons. I mean, the cards aren't free, so it's hard to just pick up new variants. You have to actually invest money, but also I think that just because there aren't really that many Duel Links tournaments, I mean, if you really think about it, if you're not looking at unofficial tournaments, how do you really get your information about what other builds are playing? You can go to YouTube, you can go to the Duel Links Reddit, but in general, other than just looking at what the opponents you're playing against are using, there isn't a fantastic way to see tournament level results. Yes, Duel Links meta does run tournaments, and that's super awesome, but in general, if we're looking at official means, we're looking at the average player, they might not know those tournaments even exist, so they're only going to look at what their opponents are playing, and if every single opponent that you're playing against is using Duel Wield and you have Duel Wield, maybe you'll say, well, obviously I should play this card too because all of my opponents are playing it. And even though I didn't start playing Duel Wield, it is basically what I experienced when I did those King of Games runs, and not so much in stage 2 or 1 because I don't get to see my opponent's deck list, but basically in those first 5 hours when there was no technically standard build of 6 Samurais, I noticed that almost all of my opponents, like over 90%, were using Duel Wield, and even though I didn't change my build according to that, I definitely realized that they were all using Duel Wield because they were all playing against other people that were also using Duel Wield. I would say even in the cases where I won, my opponents probably looked at my list and wondered what the heck I was doing because at the time it was so different from the other lists out there. And then finally, the last reason that I want to bring up in this video, but perhaps a more important reason than some of the other ones, players are playing a strong deck already. They're playing almost a tier 0 strategy whenever they play any variant of 6 Samurais. No matter how bad your build is, no matter how many random cards you play, as long as you got the Fumas, as long as you have the Dojos, and as long as you have the Xian and Kizan, your build is probably good enough to beat most decks out there, especially the non-mirror matches. So when you play Duel Wield and you don't play Duel Wield, no matter which variant you play, you're probably not going to notice a gigantic difference in win ratios just because you're already playing so many powerful cards that are just better than most of the format. It doesn't really matter if you open Duel Wield if you already have access to Anishi and Xian because those cards are so independently powerful that the Duel Wield doesn't really affect your strategy too much. There are plenty of times that when I was playing the card, I didn't even activate it, and those are cases that I think a lot of players would just sort of forget that they happened, but I remembered. I kept track of all the times that I had Duel Wield and wasn't able to use it because I wanted to make a better board. And I think that that's probably the biggest problem with players playing Duel Wield right now is they don't realize that it's not actually helping them because they're not really paying attention to, oh, I probably would have won that game if I didn't have the card anyway. They're just looking at the fact that they flipped Duel Wield and won the game, so therefore to them the card is good, even though it just means that the 6 Samurai deck is so independently powerful and so much more powerful than the other archetypes. It doesn't really matter what all the tech cards you have are because you'll probably win most of the time that you go first regardless. Anyway though, that's probably enough 6 Samurai discussion for one video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I really just hope that anyone that watched this video that really enjoys playing Duel Wield, I just hope you go out there and try like a night, just like one night, maybe one ranked session, like 2 hours or something. Just try to play without Duel Wield and see how successful your deck can be even without that card, even if you think it's a really powerful card. I think for many players, they're just so unwilling to test without it that they don't realize that it's not quite necessary for most of your wins. Anyway though, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Goodbye.